Go ahead. All right, it being 6:04, I call the Town Hall School Building Admin Committee to order. First item on the agenda will be the roll call. Kevin Kyra is here. Paul Ruggiero. Jesse Finley absent. John Doherty here. Jack Holloway here. Paul Malorani here. Diane Allen, remote.
Here.
All right. Also with us is Jeff Hull, town manager, Phil O'Brien, designer, and Dan Pilata, our OPM. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Next item on the agenda, I hope everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes. I sent out the minutes for March 30th and April 13th. First, we'll go with the March 30th minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review them? If so, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve Jack Holloway. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Paul Malorani.
Discussion.
Discussion?
Just a correction of my last name. C-A-I-R-A.
Oh, yeah. Have that correction made. All right, we have a second to approve, so we'll take a vote with the correction of Mr. Kyra's spelling of his last name. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Abstain.
One abstention.
Just want that out there.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for the April 13th minutes.
Move to accept.
Second.
Second.
Motion to approve from Paul Malorani, seconded by Jack Holloway. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a correction on the last name.
Again, same spelling on the last name for Mr. Kyra. With that made, take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And one abstention. All right, thank you very much. All right, next will be Phil. You want to go through the programming?
Sure.
We had that, and maybe a possible vote. We were having a discussion on that.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm taking notes tonight, right?
Yes.
I didn't do the last two sentences. I didn't spell it the same way. I don't want.
Okay.
Okay, so this program pretty much looks the same. Again, I don't expect you to read it all. The program pretty much looks the same as it has for the last couple of meetings. The exception here tonight is that you'll recall for the last couple of meetings, we had the potential in there for the Public Works Department and a potential storage space for them, and then of course there was the multiplier at the bottom. They added just about 2,000 square feet total for that department and the storage, and we've backed that out now. There's been a couple of other little corrections that we've made here and there during recent meetings. Got an additional staff space in the school administration, and a little bit earlier than that, we added a community meeting room, and so this represents everything that we have talked about, and we also have updated the program diagrams as well. So this represents the sizes of all the departments in the meeting spaces that we talked about, as well as the storage spaces. And the overall building size is that number down at the bottom, which is 43,000 and some change. We ended up pretty close to what was estimated for your in your last master plan study. And this is what we've been using for our recent schematic design diagrams that we've been doing for the plans and so forth. And if folks are satisfied with this, I'd like to close this stage of it with a vote if you were interested. We will, of course, do whatever you'd like, but we're continuing to move ahead in schematic design using these numbers.
A question that I have, of course, we pulled out the DPW that was in there.
Yep.
So, and there's no other significant change as far as size or anything, or any of the areas?
No, I summarized the significant changes that we made in recent meetings. The biggest one is obviously the potential add, and then the removal of the Public Works Department and the storage that was associated with that. That totaled about 2,000 square feet, so we were up at 45 and some change, and now we're back down to about 43 and some change. Prior to that, the next largest change that we made that was significant was the add of the community meeting room, which is still in there.
Mhm.
And we've left that, and that shows up in our plans currently as well.
Yeah, this is pretty much
George, I have a question.
Hold on for a second, Diana. So this pretty much just outlines the size of our building, so when we start doing the massing, we can start putting this together.
Right, these have been the sizes for each of the departments that we've been using in all the plans that we've done so far. And we've made adjustments and added some of these departments in and taken them out, and we've combined a couple of small things during our discussions. And this seems to be working the way it is right now. This doesn't mean that you can't ever revisit it and change your mind. It's your building, you can do whatever you'd like.
Right.
I would just, for our sake as a group, I don't know that we need to go through the programming slides, the 6 slides, and that I've been.
No, what I'm just trying to remind people that this was also part of the survey that we had done going through the facility.
That's exactly
speaking
right,
to the
yes.
departments.
Right.
Everybody had their input. You got to see both buildings, so as you were going through. So it's not like you just were pulling these numbers up out of a book. This is something that you were able to go around and visit each department. And
Yeah, we've seen all 3 buildings and portions of the high school, and there's quite a bit that we've done.
And we added, if you recall, we added cable TV in, cable TV out. We added DPW in, DPW out. So, we're at the point where you've all said, these are the final departments. So these numbers, unless you want to change the programming of each of the spaces, they're probably not going to change regardless of what configuration the building is.
right. Diane, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah. One other department, maybe this is really a question for the town manager, is, was there anything asked of the Veterans Department? I know they have their own building. Was there any discussion of whether they wanted to come into the town hall and have a meeting room for themselves?
Yes, I did have a conversation with Lou Samaglia, the Veterans Services Director, and he is comfortable with the space they have, which, it seems like it's been working out. It really kind of serves 2 purposes. One is that it provides an active use for a historic building. The other is that it, I think they, to some measure, they appreciate the fact that they're kind of set apart and that they have, the veterans can go over there and be serviced kind of independently of other town buildings.
And that doesn't say that he wouldn't be able to use any of the meeting spaces.
Right.
Or anything that we have in the.
Certainly, if there was any kind of need for meeting space, if he was having some kind of a program or veterans, I know for a stretch of time, there was a group that was meeting, I think it was Thursday evenings, a veterans group, and so that would be available to him as it would be other departments if he needed a meeting space at this building.
And should anything change in the future, I mean, the only thing constant in this world is change. Do we have any flexible space that we're allowing for maybe at some future point in time, we may need another office or something, or?
Extra space in each one of the offices.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out as a question and maybe ask that of the architect, is that something that when you design town halls, do you have some flex space? Should anything change?
There is a little bit of that built into each of the departments, some room for growth and flexibility in each of the departments. Some of the departments have identified future needs as a little bit more of a potential than some others, but all of the departments have a little bit of flexibility for growth. In addition to that, we also talked once upon a time about consolidation of some of the smaller conference rooms. And part of that discussion was we left the conference room numbers as they were because that room would be finished and pretty much ready to go and could be used as an office in a pinch. The other thing we discussed is that your building has a fair amount of storage space built in, and rather than just in a basement or on one floor, it's spread out in the building. And the idea there being that portions of that storage space could be used and renovated for additional office space in the future, if and when your storage needs begin to shrink as more things get digitized and you start keeping less paper copies of things.
And Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, you did, and through the survey, you did ask any anticipation and growth in the department.
Yes.
So if they were going to add a person or a desk or an office area.
That's right. And some folks asked us specifically to allow for some future spaces, and other folks thought that it was possible that they may add a staff position, and there's a couple of different places where that's pretty much built into each of the departments. And in all the other cases, we just made sure that there was enough space in there that if you needed to put somebody else in the kind of general office space, that there was room to do that.
Right.
George, just a question along those lines, and we may have talked about this before, and I just don't recall, but if there was the need at some point in time for expansion, I know we've talked about this with the senior center program. Would we be able to do that with this building?
I think that depends on the layout. Yeah, I'm hesitating because I've got three different schemes I think that I'm going to show you tonight, and they all probably could be added onto in different ways. Some of them are going to be easier to add onto than others, and so I could certainly point that out as we go along. If you would like us to make sure that we allow for some future space for potential expansion, we could certainly do that. I mean, it's not uncommon for folks to say, could you plan for that? And we just put a dotted line on the plan that shows where you might expand in the future. But basically, a double-loaded corridor that comes down a corridor in the middle, offices on either side, if you just extend that out at a later date, extend the corridor and add more office. Pretty traditional way to add more office space to a facility like this. And so I'll kind of point that out as we go along. Some of the schemes are kind of tucked into a corner, for lack of a better term, and adding on to those schemes may be a little trickier than some of the other ones that have a little bit more space around.
So as I recall, one of the plans, one of the designs we looked at on the one end, or I guess on the far end of to the July 4th building, there was a stairwell. So conceivably, for example, and I'm not sure if that's the spot, if that were to be the spot where the expansion could occur, that stairwell could be knocked out and just the building expanded in that direction?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, so one of the things I'll remind, just for an idea, we're talking 43,000 square feet for this building. Our current town hall is 20,000 square feet. The Roman house is 4,500 square feet. So, yeah, we're adding another almost 20,000 storage space. So,
I should point out, in the spaces that you have, especially at the Roman House, you really got folks squeezed in over there.
Right.
So when
yeah.
you say that you got 4,000 square feet over
That's
there,
an
it's,
understatement.
it's a pretty big house, single-family house, but
Well, it was built as a single-family house.
and,
right.
it is not a generous
The
amount of
sh-
space
the
for
sh-
the
the sh-
department
the
and the
shoe
folks that
wart.
are in there now.
Okay,
George, how many people are in the, maybe it's a question for Paul there, or Dario, how many people, administrative staff is in the Roman House currently?
It's currently 9 people, and then in this plan, we had asked for 1 additional body. And then, the other pieces, I mean, that's just the Roman House, then we have student support services that are kind of, some are in the art center, and some are all over the place that we're bringing into this building where they kind of belong. Same with technology.
and I do know when you have your head teacher's meeting or your principal's meetings up in the conference room, it does get a little tight. I've been up there for those meetings, so. All right, so, I believe that we've gone through this programming to the point where you're looking for us to take a vote to approve it, so you can move to the next phase on this.
That's what I'd recommend. We've been working in the next phase, schematic design and siting the building. We just think that it seems like it's time that you could kind of solidify this.
And we can always go back, as we're designing it, if something doesn't work right, we need to add 500, 600 feet, we can. It's the concept of the programming, I think we've got it down.
I would have to agree with you, but. Do we have any more discussion on the program? Okay. No? All right,
So George, just to be clear, and my understanding of this evening is Phil asking us to vote on the square footage or the programming?
it's the programming that he has laid out. So what you see here, what you see in front of you, that's your program.
Right?
That's what he's asking us to finalize. He's asking us to finalize, which is a vote from this committee.
That totals up to the 43,124
Correct.
square feet.
Yes.
Okay,
George,
thank you.
It's a vote to finalize, but
It-
it can be adjusted.
it can be
So
adjusted.
do we not use that word finalize if we can adjust it?
Well, it's to give them direction so they can move forward to the point. So, yeah. So we'll take a vote, we'll accept.
I think Kevin's right. I mean, finalize is probably not the greatest word. I mean, assent to the program as presented or as presented.
Yeah,
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
as presented.
Is that
by the
okay? Assent to the-
architect. Yeah.
Okay.
I would entertain a motion. Excuse me.
It all means the
You
same
okay
to
with the
me.
word
It
assent?
doesn't-
He's right, though. It's not really finalized, because
exact-
it's gonna be tweaked all the way to the end.
I would entertain a motion to
I'll make the motion.
accept
Accept the
the
program.
programming as presented.
Okay.
Motion by John Doherty,
I'll second.
seconded by Kevin Kyra. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Very much.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, you can continue on with this. It's your presentation, right? So you.
Yep. Okay, so on the survey, we showed you this plan last time, and this is what we've been using for our current site planning discussions and so forth. Where we left this last time is that you'll recall the surveyor had a wetlands scientist go out and flag wetlands, and then they went back and surveyed it, and this is the plan. We had some questions about that, and we were looking for some additional information other than some handwritten notes on a single piece of paper, and so we did get a wetlands report,
We did get the wetlands report.
which clarified some of the questions that we had.
Is this from the independent partners?
So, the notes that we got with the survey, Kevin, were from the wetland scientist that came out and did it. didn't write a report. And I called the civil engineer and I said, you know, who did the wetlands report, because we're going to get a second opinion. And he said, the person that did the report is who I was gonna get the second opinion from. So I know that the wetlands are right, because I know the scientists that did it. And what I asked them to do was just, you know, since we own the report, was to get the report done. So that report coordinates with the flagging that was done, as opposed to handwritten notes that we got at the last meeting. So I don't know if, I didn't get a second truly independent, but the way wetland scientists work is I'd have to go out and remove all the flags and they'd come back and flag it in the exact same spot. So the wetland scientist that did this is very good, and there's no getting around, it's a wetland.
And when you read through the procedures they went through, it seems pretty clear that they were careful about what they did. They found, in some cases, they have said that the stream is intermittent, which is good. This is some of the information we needed. We needed to make sure that that isn't a perennial, which would make an impact on us, because the Rivers Protection Act may kick in, which has a 200-foot setback. That is not the case here. They said that the intermittent stream that runs down that hill really only runs when the water gets deeper, in really around this time of year. I think it's probably going to dry up in the summertime, which kind of corresponds with what we saw when we were out there last summer looking at it. We didn't see any water in there. The depth of the water that you can see if you pull into the parking lot up there now and you take a look in, there's a little standing water in there. They pointed out that when they flagged that, the deepest spot they found was 4 inches. It's not a big pond up there. It's just a little wet, and there's a puddle. But it's clear that they did soil excavation and they examined the soil cross-section to make sure that they're soils that show signs of annual wetting and so forth. It seems pretty clear that they've done their homework, and
Right.
I don't see any reason to question what
They
they've
found
done.
hydric soil and vegetated wetland plants, so it's a wetland.
Okay, I'm only asking, this last meeting, you were so
I was,
confident that we needed another
We-
opinion and another button.
We definitely needed better information, and I think we have
I
that better
would,
information.
I was very upset with the quality of the chicken scratch I got that accompanied that plan,
Yep.
which is why I wanted more information. The person that did the chicken scratch is very, very good and very reputable. He just didn't write a report, and we didn't get a report. And so when I asked the civil engineer that put everything together, who did the report, and he told me it was the same person I was calling to get a price to do a report. I said, you owe me a report. So I got the report, and we didn't pay anything. So the important part is we didn't pay anything. We got what we should have gotten to begin with, and if we had gotten that with it, Kevin, I wouldn't have asked for the second opinion. Right?
So this is, I mean, excuse me for not being a wetland scientist or professional, but this is more than just the parking lot from the senior center. The snow melts, runs down to the back part area, that the upper properties there drain down into it.
Absolutely, that's causing the wetland to be a wetland, but it doesn't matter. Once the vegetation starts and the
So
soil
it's not
becomes hydrated.
kind of trapped water. The more trapped the water gets, it traps.
In the report, it looks like what he's alluding to is that there's properties up here that basically are draining down into this area. Everybody's backyard basically is draining into this area. It's a wooded area, and like a lot of wooded areas, people think of them as,
Right, it's wooded, so it defoliates, the leaves fall, the wetlands, right, so they decompose, and of course.
I think in the last meeting, Selectman Carrier said that, he was concerned that, the residents up there might have a water problem when we build. Well, they're higher than we are. So we're getting their water, as opposed to us pushing it back to them. Can't do it.
Right.
We'll go uphill.
you
George,
speculate.
I have a question. With regard to that was made here by the company, has the town's conservation agent walked the site? And is the town conservation agent in agreement with these delineated areas.
So.
I
that-
can confirm that, but I believe, I've had discussion with Paula Looney and Valerie Gingrich, and I think they would be in agreement to this.
So
plan.
that is actually a step, Diane, for final. Your Conservation Commission knows there's vegetated wetlands there, and I would be shocked if they didn't agree with the findings of the biologist. There's usually not that much argument of where wetlands end. See, although we flag and it looks disjointed, it really is truly right where those flags are, is the beginning of the wetland. Not at all. I don't think it would hurt to have the agent go out and take a look at the flagging. But I don't think it will change the flagging for the purposes of schematic design.
Okay.
All right? It will affect the final design of our drainage structures and things of that nature, but it won't really affect where we're putting the building. We're staying away from it. We have to.
I need to interrupt this for 2 seconds because it almost sounds like it's an electronic issue. And every like 30 seconds, a very loud noise comes up, and that goes away. And it comes back and goes away. Now, it could be as something as typing this. So far, it's and it sounds like thunder. and I don't know where it's coming from other than, okay, something like this. I'm on
How about the one in the
camera,
middle?
And this one I'm not certain of. What I'm hearing is that before everyone hears it, I hear it in my headset. You guys can't hear it, but I can. It sounds like you can. I can't hear anybody talking. And then it goes away. Then it goes away. Now, if it wasn't one of these issues, I think this, I don't know what it is. So keep the meeting going.
Okay.
Trying to get off camera. But keep the meeting going.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And it's an inappropriate time for something like this to happen. I hear it. I hear in that speaker, so. I go like this. It's really loud, and it resonates, it comes away, it comes back. Keep trying.
Okay.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Diane?
Sorry for that.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
As long, yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion before he proceeds?
So just to be clear, the area to the Fourth of July side of the lot is where all the wetlands area there's no areas closer to School Street.
No, it's in that forested, that wooded area.
Up on the hill.
If you drive into this parking lot and you park your car here, now that I don't think the trees have leafed out yet. If you look in there, I did this 4 weeks ago.
Together.
Yeah, we were both up there. And last couple of meetings that we came to, we both met up there because we wanted to check on it. If you look into the woods, you could see right here is about the only wet spot.
Yep.
It's a puddle in the woods.
Yep.
Otherwise, it looks like this big thing that runs down the hill. You can't see anything. It just looks like woods. But there's a puddle in a kind of a low spot, kind of right up in the middle of this bit right in there that you could see from the parking lot. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to tell it's anything.
If I recall, there's a culvert or some kind
Catch
of
basin at the
catch
bottom.
basin that kind of runs in
Yeah.
in an
Drains
angle
right into
across
it.
towards the Swain Green, is that correct?
There's a manhole, a catch basin right here at the edge of the parking lot that, in the report, the wetland scientist speculates was added to pick up the water that might have been running out of the woods. I don't know that, but that's speculation.
They probably had ice.
I've seen it. I
Yeah,
walk
I've
my
seen
dog
it
there
also.
all the time, and I
Yeah.
walk my dog, I've purposely been going up through the woods recently, and I've seen the exact same thing you described, just a puddle
Yeah.
up
And
there.
Right there where it's kind of flat across the end, rather than kind of coming down to a point at the, I'm sorry, I don't have a larger image of this. There's the catch basin, and then there's 2 points at the end of the wetland that kind of form a triangle. And the reason that wetland doesn't extend down to the catch basin, I think, is because there's a berm of soil that looks like it could have come from snow plowing or something like that, that just got shoved into there, and the water kind of sits there, and it holds the water back a little bit, and the water trickles around it, and then finds its way to the catch basin.
When the swing school was there, there was always water in the
The
basement.
basement.
Is that coming from that hill? I
Oh, I'm
mean,
sure there's a lot of runoff from the hill. Again, I'm not a specialist on it, and if you had the Google Earth map, or you could see that.
The hydrogeologic report will determine that, but I think it's a pretty good bet it's coming from the hill.
You can see this right here. It actually comes to here and then goes, that's what that is. That's been dug in. And it goes right across where the Swain Green is.
But my guess, based on the age of that building and the fact that you have water in the basement, I think it was water table. And the water was coming up, and water table at certain times of the year probably got higher than the foundation, the floor, and came in through the foundation.
Right, it was an asphalt floor in there, if you recall, and whenever in April, the rainy season, it would start to come up. You could actually walk on the asphalt and feel it kind of be spongy.
So we're not really, we're hoping not to put any floor levels down below the water table in this design, so. So that, I skipped ahead a little bit.
No more Jetsons?
But basically, I've got a couple of schemes. It looks like there's 4 here, but really it's 3. I put a copy of the site plan only of B1 in here, just to remind folks kind of where we were. And we did another scheme we're calling B2, which is an update of that, even though this is one of those schemes that we kind of talked about and then set aside. We're bringing this back. This is a scheme that shows a building out near the street. We're bringing this back because we think it's worth having that conversation again now that we know that there's a wetland resource in the woods there. We also have Scheme F. The last time we met, we showed you a potential site plan for Scheme F, which is basically a compressed version of the Scheme E, which is the one that we were kind of heading towards before we found this wetland resource. And so we've taken that Scheme E, which I think we've put a fair amount of work into, and we've just compressed that down and slid it a little bit away from the wetland. We showed you that as just a site plan last time, and we've got 4 plans to go along with that as well. The last scheme we have for tonight is Scheme G. This was based on suggestions from you all to try a 2-story scheme that extends further back into the hill. And I don't think we did everything that you had suggested in this scheme, but I think it's worth taking a look at. The idea is to do more of a 2-story scheme with a 1-story addition that has the meeting spaces in it, extend it back into the hill, and then try to stay a little bit further away from the wetland. So I'll walk you through those. So there's the site plan that we just looked at. And then this is the one that we showed you back in February that we call B1. You'll recall we had a 3-story scheme with a 1-story addition at the rear of it that had an entrance that came in off of the street, off of Middlesex Ave, and an entrance that came in from the rear, so that you could come in to the town offices and then make your way up the stairs of the elevator to school administration on the 3rd floor, or you could come in the evening from the parking lot and then make your way into this meeting spaces, which are consolidated over here. So we didn't change this slide at all, other than to add this date on here from the meeting, but we wanted to show this to you so that you could kind of compare and contrast it to this. This is what we're calling B2. So we took another shot at another scheme. The building is slightly larger than it was by about 1,000 square feet. than it was in February because of some of the changes that we have made. And so this B2 shows a building that is a little bit longer, kind of left to right, east to west. Still has a one-story in the back where the meeting space is. Still bringing folks in from the parking lot. You could certainly bring folks in directly from the street. In this case, we've kind of brought them in from the side. The other difference here is that we had a row of parking along the, in this area last time, and now this is really just a driveway. And so the idea is that you could drop somebody off and they can make their way in to the building from there. We've got a pretty large space that's open without any trees, again, and then there is the potential that you could add some more parking, we were kind of showing in blue. We did that last time. One of the other things we did is we eliminated some of the parking spaces right near the wetland. I don't know whether or not it's gonna be an issue, but we're trying to stay away from it. We did that in this scheme, we did do that in the other two schemes that we're gonna show you. The idea is we don't really know what the requirements are gonna be. Right now, this dumps into the parking lot, into a catch basin. We assume that we're gonna need to do something just like that. And so, by eliminating the parking spaces, we may be able to stay away from the wetland a little bit more, but that also means that we'd have to maybe raise the grade around that, or do something different, because of the catch basin won't be in the same place. So I don't really know what the best solution is gonna be until the civil engineers get a better look at it. So in this scheme, we're showing the potential of some loss of parking space. But that's what this thing looks like. Obviously, by eliminating the row of parking that we had in here in scheme B1, we've got less parking spaces on this.
But is that 48 less than what we were originally going?
Yeah.
And the main entrance would be in the rear of the building with this scenario?
Yes, so in this one, there's kind of a ceremonial entrance from the street, and you certainly could still get to that side entrance in this other scheme, but this loss of parking spaces right here is really what contributes to the.
And B1 and B2 are both three-story
What,
buildings?
They're both three-story
What
buildings.
scheme is looking at?
Hold on,
I
sir.
can't hear him.
A B1 and B2, Diane?
B1 and B2?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So that loss of parking right there, I mean, you could certainly slide this building down or compress it a little bit more and get some of that parking back. But we just wanted to,
We're trying to keep the green
and
as
we,
large as we can.
yeah, and we also, we're trying to investigate what it meant if we kind of looked at this scheme, and because it's been since the middle of February that we looked at B1, we wanted to see if we could do some things in the plan that were a little bit more reminiscent of some of the things that we did in scheme E. And so the organization of this plan is very similar in a lot of ways in terms of the layout of the spaces and their adjacencies to one another and so forth, as some of the other things that we've done in the past. So again, you're coming in from the rear, nighttime zone closes down here, and you can get access to the toilets, the community meeting room, the hearing room, the large meeting room, a lot of that same stuff that we had talked about in these other schemes still works here. Once you close these doors down, it provides security for the rest of the town hall and the upper floors. It locks down the stairs and the elevator, so that basically this little suite of spaces works at night as kind of its standalone, like it does in the other schemes. We've got your kind of more popular offices down here for the town departments, again, very similar to what we have going on up the hill, exit stairs at either end of the building, and an entrance that comes in from the side rather than in from the front. You may recall that in scheme B1, we had the entrance kind of coming in from the front. You could certainly do that, and what it does, though, is it isolates one of these departments on the other side of the corridor. And that didn't seem to go over all that well, so we try to resolve that by bringing folks in the side. That's really what some of the differences are here. The other thing is that this plan kind of stretches out a little bit longer left to right than its predecessor, B1. When you get upstairs, the rest of the town offices on the second floor, town manager's office at the back, storage spaces, the toilet rooms all stack up, stairs and elevator, the exit stairs at either end of the building. The plan is basically very simple. And when you get up to the upper floor, again, some of these things don't change at all. Exactly the same toilet room layout. Again, we're trying to stack up all the piping and everything, and just to make the thing simple to understand when people are moving around the building and simple to build. A lot of the same things that we talked about, access to the meeting spaces directly from the departments, as well as from the corridors. Again, a lot of the same things that we talked about in Scheme E. Still work here, but this is a street-fronted building. Maybe a little bit better from an urban planning point of view in terms of establishing that kind of feeling of a suburban downtown, but obviously has an impact on the parking. So the next thing we did, we showed you this last time, this Scheme F. We called this a potential Scheme F last time because all we had was the site plan. But basically what we did is we took Scheme E, which extended a little bit further down into this area, and we slid it back so that we were outside the wetland setback 25 feet. It extends over to the setback line on this end of the building, and you can see it covers a portion of what you can see of the Bazell from the green. You can still see the edge of that building kind of poking out there, and you can certainly get a good look at it coming up School Street. But it is tucked in around the back. We still have an entrance/exit that comes in from the upper floor, the second floor. So this is a 3-story section, and again, we have the 1-story meeting room area on the end. And again, the plan for this is very similar to what it was before. This type of plan where we can put the building into the side of the hill really does maximize the amount of parking that you have down there in the flat spot where parking really wants to be. The green pretty much stays the way it is. We've got a pretty wide open space without any trees and so forth for larger amusements and so forth for the carnival. One of the things that I will point out is that the amount of space that you have here for sledding on this hill is probably pretty limited in this scheme. You can probably still do it. I'm not sure if the parents are going to love it as much as they do now. The end of this building extends pretty much to where those stone steps are in the grass, and then another probably 5 or 6 feet beyond that. So taking a look at the plans here. Again, this is going to look a lot like Scheme E. This kind of suite of meeting spaces down at the end here, at the entrance, access to the toilets at night, the shutdown for the doors in the evening, how it locks off the stairs and the elevator and the rest of the spaces. Pretty much works the same as it did in Scheme E. It really just, from left to right, we just squeezed it left to right and then extended it front and back. It's pretty much Scheme E squeezed. It doesn't, not a lot of things changed from top to bottom. We did a couple little things differently. You'll see that there's an exit stair here that serves all 3 floors of the building. Exit stair here.
Phil, did you do any elevations of these schemes?
I have not at this point, because we have, you'll recall the last time you convinced me to do some elevation schemes. We were kind of down to a single scheme, Scheme 3. So we haven't done anything. This is going to look a lot like the images that we showed you from the outside. It may not extend as long along the back of the parking lot. It won't look much different. If anything, because this building is a little bit more compact, it probably is going to appear to be a little bit smaller from the parking lot and from School Street. It's just going to look a little smaller because it's got a more compact footprint. Because the overall length of it, left to right here, is a little shorter. I think you could see if you just compared this to Scheme E. I didn't want to say that, I don't have that with me. But when the overall length of the building changes, the corridor shortens. It doesn't get any wider, so there's less corridor space serving the same area inside the building. So it's actually a little bit more efficient when it shortens up. It's just going to look a little bit more compact on site.
So in this scheme here, this diagram, you have public works there. So that no longer is part of this.
That's right, good for you, yes.
So
We no longer need that.
That gives you quite a bit of space there. I'd almost like to see the recreation department go downstairs where the accounting office is, since that's an active department, not that these are not all active departments, and have the accounting come upstairs.
Here.
But that's just me. But you certainly have room now taking away the Department of Public Works.
Yes, yeah, good for you. We started this scheme kind of back before our last meeting, and so some of it's still left over. Thank you.
I think it's gonna give you a little breathing room in all your spaces if you wanna shift and move a little bit as we get into the detail. You know, your green box and your orange box might not be exactly square, you know what I mean? You'll have that ability to push and pull and tug based on, you know, furniture layouts and things of that nature.
So one other question, Phil, I have is, so in the scheme F that we're looking at here, we were looking at the building here, what would you say is the distance from the edge of the building to the wetlands?
25 feet is the setback that if you look at the site plan here, Diane, each of these red lines represents 25 feet. So that's 25, 50, 75, and 100.
Okay.
And we
So you
heard,
said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first word you said. So how many feet was it?
25.
25.
25.
We heard last time that the conservation agent had suggested that we stay at least 25 away from the wetland. So that's what we're trying to do in this scheme.
Okay. And with G, and with scheme G, did you stay about approximately that same distance?
I haven't showed you G yet, but that's.
We haven't got to G. You're cheating.
I kind of cheated and looked
And
ahead.
you looked ahead. So we're gonna skip right past here. You will see that what we try to do with scheme G, Diane, was to try to, one of the things that we heard is 25 feet was the kind of absolute minimum. If we could get closer to 50, that would be better. And so what we tried to do is push the building out in this scheme to 50. So you can see that there's a couple of constraints here that are starting to pinch this scheme. We're getting awful close to the Buzzell. That doesn't mean it's impossible to do, but it will mean we're a pretty good-sized building here. And so it just means that the windows in this building, looking out, and the windows in the Buzzell, when you're in either one of those buildings and you're looking out the window, you're gonna be looking at somebody else. And you're not gonna be looking at the, at the view. That doesn't mean it's impossible. This also is gonna be, there's gonna be some restrictions on the openings and sizes of windows you can have there if this building stays. Just because of the fire code. If buildings are too close together, as you can imagine, fire could spread from building to building. And so the code recognizes that, and they put restrictions on what we can do and what we can't. So, but we try to do what you asked in Scheme G, and I'll get into the details of it when I get to Scheme G, but you can see that this section in Scheme G is 2 stories versus 3 stories. And we tried to stay out of the Buzzell parking lot. Now, we don't necessarily have to do that. If we can get a little bit more space and take more of the Buzzell parking lot and extend the 2-story section of this, we can reduce the size of the 1-story section of this. And I think you can see here pretty clearly, we're over the easements, we're over the setback line right now along the street. So we've tried, but it's really a squeeze. If we push this in, it's obviously gonna have to poke out this way. Now, the horn of the wetlands kind of pokes out in that direction, and so if we extend back, we're gonna be beyond the 50-foot, and we're gonna be into the 25 again. So we tried to do what the suggestion was.
With all due respect, Phil, that wasn't my suggestion. My suggestion was to eliminate the Buzzell School and make it go in an L shape from here over. That is nothing what I suggested.
Okay.
Okay? I know that Jack suggested the L shape go in the opposite direction, which is there, but I'm waiting to see the scheme without the Bazell School
Okay.
there, which would allow for more parking, an access through, and straight across would be.
Sure. I remember the discussion, Kevin. I thought the concern is that if we pursued a scheme that required the demolition of the Bozell, that also means that it requires the positive vote for the senior center, which means this
I don't
scheme
remember-
couldn't work
I
without.
don't remember that discussion about us talking about a positive vote for the senior center.
Okay, I thought that was part of the
Maybe
discussion.
an offline discussion, maybe, I don't know.
We touched on it. We talked about the one project hinging on another project, so.
I'm happy to take a look at that scheme.
I would suggest you take a look at that.
At the Bazell.
Right, correct, exactly what
We have
Kevin was
never,
talking.
on everything we've done, we, if, I didn't know if the board, I know Kevin, you did obviously request it, but the board didn't jump on the bandwagon and say, hey, it's time
Well,
to look at removing the
to-
Bazell, which is fine, just give us the consent, like,
Some of the constraints that we're seeing here, from the survey of the wetlands, to something we have here that is going to obviously block out the whole Bazell Center right now, and you're not gonna be able to see, it's just not gonna look good, not be appealing at all, as far as my personal opinion. I'm not gonna speak for anybody else in the committee, so that's why I think with the constraints we have, we don't want to throw away any option that we might have. Yeah.
I'm not in disagreement with Kevin. I think the Bazell's in tough shape, and unless you incorporated the Bazell in the design, which no one has ever talked about, maybe perhaps putting the schools in the Bazell or putting departments in the Bazell and completely renovating the Bazell to new-like condition, is that an option? I'm playing devil's advocate here, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but is that something we should look at? Look at not only demolishing it, but look at possibly reusing it. Sorry, Phil.
That's gonna be trickier.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have a stone foundation there, I mean, there's a
I didn't
lot.
say it would be inexpensive. That was, the question was, I mean, if you're gonna look at completely removing it, shouldn't you look at also possibly trying to reuse it?
Would it be cost prohibitive, though?
I think it'll be cost
I
prohibitive.
think it would be
but, I mean,
really
we-
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't an option regarding the senior center to reuse it, or to refurbish it, or to redesign it, or to.
No, it was a negative. It was a negative based on
Right.
finance.
So why would we do that for the town hall? I think that we would want new,
Okay.
right? So, that's why I suggested a two-floor building, and that become part of this section here would be the school section, and this section would be the town hall section.
And would get out of needing a variance for front yard setback, because you don't want to do that.
Right, and keep it, yeah, we can probably make it fit in the setback and away from the setback on the wetland. We'll take a look at that. I'll have that for the next one, we'll call it H.
And you have, and as I mentioned, you have a basement in the Bazell, right? So
A
so-
partial basement.
Just
yes.
a partial.
basement.
Yeah.
But that can also be incorporated into storage. And if you incorporate that into storage, then you may save some space on the other side of the building for storage. So you
No,
may
I-
condense a little bit more there as well, so.
I don't think I'm understanding, if we're demolishing the building,
Yeah,
You're getting rid of the building, right?
yes.
Okay, but you can still keep a partial basement below.
No.
When you're building, no?
No, I don't think that you'd
No,
want,
okay.
I don't think you'd wanna do that, especially if it's stone and a partial
By the
basement.
time we're done removing that basement, the stone walls will be junk.
Okay.
I have to, through you, Mr. Chair, I just have to say that I think the spitballing is great. It's a great exercise in trying to come up with every idea possible, but we're talking about you know, the senior center, that is the senior center. There's nothing in stone that says the senior center project is gonna pass a town meeting, and,
I hate to think that we're spinning our wheels thinking that we can move forward on this project when we do something that would hinge on another project that's happening in town.
It-
So, I mean, I just have to caution, you know, if we, I think it's a great idea, Kevin, and I think we're fleshing out every possibility on the site, but if, God forbid, the senior center doesn't pass, we're not doing anything with that building, you know?
What would happen if you made that a 3-story?
It would have a smaller footprint, it may fit a little bit better. We could take a look at that as well. I know I'm not worried about, from my point of view, if you'd like me to look at this, I'm happy to do it. And even if you'd like to look at the addition scheme, I'm not in favor, I don't think it would really work. But if anybody thinks that there's a benefit to having uncovered, you know, turned over that stone, so in case somebody puts their hand up at town meeting and say, how come we didn't look at doing X, Y, Z? If you have, you could say, we did look at that scheme J, and we looked at that, and that didn't work for these 5 reasons. Then you have that answer. If you think there's a benefit to that, then there's your value, even if it doesn't ultimately become a scheme that you decide you want to pursue. It doesn't take us much time to do it.
Well, I think we have to have an answer for every question that's gonna be asked.
Right.
So I don't mind doing it, and it could be that in going through that process, we discover some things that, you know, that may lead us to another scheme that has another idea that works out well, that we can come and show you. I mean, if there's a way to get it into the hill, clearly, when we look at schemes that kind of put a building down on the flat, you don't end up with as much parking. That seems pretty clear. Because building the parking on the slope is problematic. And so if we can build the building in the slope there somewhere, and when you look at the wetland setback, if you could build a building beyond the street setback there, and then outside of the wetland zone, you know, I can imagine a 3-story rectangle that kind of tucks right in there, and would take care of everything.
Would that, being as close as it would be to the folks across the street at School Street, is that gonna be the school, when it was there, that was what, was that 3 or 2?
Lay it out.
When the Swain was there, is that, I'm trying to recall, is that 2-story or was that
2.5.
2.5.
Yeah, because part of it was below ground, so a 3-story is gonna be that size and a little bit
Well,
more.
I'm not suggesting it a 3-story. As
Yep.
I suggested, the Bazell School comes extended out onto the 2nd floor of the town hall and you have the 1st floor. So this would be a 2-story building.
That's what we're gonna look at.
It
yeah.
wouldn't go above the existing Bazell School. So it would be more appealing, I think, for the community to see a 2-story building than a 3-story building.
Yeah.
Are you
I would agree.
envisioning what I'm envisioning?
Yeah, I think you're right.
You have the Bazell School, so you're getting rid of the Bazell School to make this brand new on that section, and it just extends out, and that's your 2nd floor, and below it is your 1st floor.
Right, so certainly 2 stories would be
You're doing this. You know,
Yeah.
this going into the hill, that going that way with the 2nd story here.
Right.
Right.
Diane, did you have a question?
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at all these various schemes here, and in light of whether we're looking at FG and maybe H here, don't we think it might make sense to do borings so we don't get any more surprises down the road? I'm thinking the additional time for to blast or the depth of the
Correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, if we were to additional borings on top of it, so a lot of times, or every time, when they do those borings, it's usually once you determine the footprint, so you know the areas exactly where you are going to take those borings, those samples. So that's the only problem with that.
Right, right. And you know, I agree with what you're saying, George, I understand that. What I'm looking at from my perspective is that, you know, we're saying move the building here or change the angle, and quite frankly, you know, I don't care whether the L shape comes in the front or in the back, if we meet all the requirements or whatever. What I'm thinking of siting the building, the siting of the building that we all, you know, we're putting these pictures around and, you know, storyboards and everything, and then we wait and we do these borings and we find out, you know what? Boy, oh boy, to put it in that exact location, that ledge is pretty deep and there's gonna be a lot of blasting. And if I were living on School Street and I heard the word blasting, I would not be too happy about voting to put the town hall there. So thus, I'm trying to anticipate, and as we say here, we're trying to rule out any questions, you know, that might arise, whether we have a public forum or whatever we're doing. But I mean, borings aren't that expensive to do, and
So the
alleviate, a lot of questions, and help Phil with the siting of the building. And maybe I'm wrong, Phil, maybe I'm wrong about that.
I do not see a benefit to doing borings now, Diane. I'd recommend against it.
Okay? Okay.
I
All
mean,
right. Just threw the question out there, I had to ask it.
that doesn't mean that when we do the borings that we won't find something. I mean, but I'm guessing that whatever we find is going to be universal on the site, sloping downward as the site slopes. So usually the ledge follows contours.
I'm sure there's, ledge in that whole area, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe?
Maybe. I have a question also, and almost to Kevin's point, the way this is kind of laid out, and he was talking about bringing this over, what if you had this like almost two houses? Yeah, town, school.
Yeah.
You know, so this kind of continues on this way, instead of just being an L, just have the two set up.
Separate.
With the courtyard in the middle.
Right, and then you.
So you have two of these.
Right, and this
And
connecting
then,
through.
yeah,
Yeah.
geez, that's not a bad idea, John.
Why, thanks, Kev. All in favor?
And it's a two-story building, right?
Two-story.
And it still builds off of the Gazelle.
Exactly.
Builds off of the Gazelle as one full story
And then
across
goes
and then down to
into
the second
two,
story.
yeah.
And then this is a
Same
straight
thing,
two-story.
mirror image.
Yeah, and you could actually, Phil, if put your, meeting rooms in the middle, and that way there, you're cutting off both sections, and your meeting rooms are in the middle.
Although you'll be adding stairwells for the separate wings.
And you're adding.
That's up to the designer. We just come up with the.
Yeah, we're just
The idea of it.
It's a good idea, but I think you're also adding height on the School Street side too, which is something that we were trying to stay away from.
No,
No,
but
we're keeping the height the same as the gazelle, so we won't be adding any height to it. It's
Well,
just gonna come off.
in G, the height on the School Street site is not the same height as the Bazell.
I think I get where, Selectman Kyra and the chairman wanna go. And they're looking at more of an H building. And I think you should come up with a scheme with an H building, but I would agree with Paul that the one leg of the H should not be the same height as the other leg of the H. You should still try to have the smaller side towards School Street, so it's not imposing on the streetscape. All along, one of the successes of what we've been drawing has been the step up, so that it wasn't imposing on the neighborhood
Right.
across the street. I think we can still achieve that, and achieve some of the spatial changes that they're looking to try and do. Especially if Bazell can be, for planning purposes, eliminated.
Can we talk about parking just for a second?
Sure.
Like, how many parking, I know that the high school has a dedicated, how many spots do they have? Is it the 304 is?
We've been planning on trying to make sure that they had 175, based on some
Okay.
counts that we've done. And
Okay.
this building requires 140.
140 and 175.
75.
Those are kind of the minimum numbers. But for right now, what we're showing is kind of maximizing one of the 304s.
And that does
But
not
even
prove
more
the
than that,
So there's no give for parking, like, we couldn't push the building into the parking area a bit.
So,
I mean, and a lot of the stuff we're doing too, we're also trying to save the Swain
Yeah.
Green, the grass area,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think, Phil touched on a little bit, is that we can add parking over here, right? Behind the gazelle.
There's 40 spaces over there
Yeah.
now.
Is that in the count?
And that
It's not
can
in that
be,
count. It says there's a note
So
over there that's
it's not, and that can be employee parking.
Yeah, so if
Correct.
we had 40 spaces over there, to Paul's point, we could pull the building out a little bit to give us a little more elbow room with the constraint of the setback and the constraint of the wetland line.
And that would also give the larger part of the L that's going into the hill, it would pull that out in case there's ledge or.
Right.
Right, that works if Bazell goes away. The scheme is kind of hinging on that.
Yeah,
I mean, if the building goes away, then yeah, all that parking is, you could use for this building. But if both buildings need to stay, then that building is gonna need parking spaces.
I mean, everybody has advocated that that building is no longer good to be used, right? I mean, that has been the driving force of a new senior center, because the Bazell School has lost its usefulness. I know that George's group did a fantastic job in renovating it, and it's too bad, but they put a lot of new material in it, but you know,
Does also show some signs of wear and
You know.
it's not pleasant space.
I agree with what Paul is saying here. And, it might be something to give some thought to, because the projections of the high school is going way, way down for the 10-year projection that they're doing for MSBA. And, Paul, Rogero could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but thought I heard somewhere in the numbers of, 500 and some odd students being in that school, where it's really built for 790, with the enrollment going down.
You can
So,
always restrict the number
you
of
know,
students parking,
I
and
mean,
we're putting 175 spots.
if we were to cut down some of those student parking spaces, it isn't as, in other words, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if the school population was growing so much, okay, we would say, that we better not touch the parking spaces, because, the school enrollment is just going out of sight. And, kids love, the minute they're going into the junior year, they're getting a car. So I think Paul might have a very good point of, yeah, you might lose a little bit of parking, but I don't think it would have that drastic effect.
Yeah, I would disagree a
And,
little bit.
and help
Diana.
out with the wetlands too.
Dan, did you have a point you wanted to
Well,
make?
what I wanted to get across was, I mean, we can go back and forth on every little detail. But, you know, there's a reason why we did the parking the way we did it. And the reason was you have 5 or 6 events each year that are commanding space. So the question really becomes is do we have the permission on the design team to make sure we keep the 300 spaces, but 40 of them can be in the upper lot, and let us reconfigure the lower lot that still maintains the event space, but gives us a little elbow room for Paul. I think
To nudge the building a little bit.
Yeah, maybe shift the building a little bit or turn the angle of the parking. I don't know what the solution is, but we seem to want to be satisfying the event space and not taking into account that employees could park on the upper lot and give us a little bit of a buffer on the lower lot. So if we're going to go down the path of perhaps pretending the Buzzell's not there for now, I think we should look at the parking lot too, but with the caveat that we cannot go below 260 spaces on the lower lot. So the upper lot 40 and the 270 on the lower lot would give you the 310 you need for zoning. Is that a good way to go about
Yeah,
it?
I mean, if you can keep the 300 on the lower lot, that would be important too, because don't forget, although we have the 4 or 5 events each year, you have a lot of school activity with football games and soccer games, and you have, I mean, that, you drive by there and any given night, there could be a play going on,
Town
or a
meeting.
concert going on, so, reducing it, I like the idea of keeping it at the 300+ level. And then why couldn't you put the 40 in the back? It seems like you can still put parking in the back, even if it's not a full 40, if it's 30.
I don't think you get where I'm going. Where I'm going is, can we encroach on the 300 on the bottom? Knowing that we have 40 at the top, that's not in the count, can we encroach on the bottom? Or encroach on the green, the swaying green?
But do you need to? Why would you need to encroach on it if it's gonna fit?
I'm envisioning that the building's gonna move forward a little bit and squeeze a little bit so that it fits. Because I think that, we'll have a scheme that saves the Buzzell, we'll have a scheme that doesn't save the Buzzell. I think you're gonna need that flexibility.
There's 247 spaces on the lower lot now, and we're showing, bumping it up to 304. I think what Dan is wondering is, can we keep it closer to what it is right now?
Or even leaving it at 270, which would
260,
be,
270.
because with the 40 up top, that leaves you with the 170 for the school department and 140 for the zoning on the town hall school administration building. That works. That's a lot of spaces. That's still an add of,
Well, Phil, I think you hear our
spaces.
concern as far as the parking spots. We're trying to maximize it instead of reducing. We're trying to maximize the.
So we'll
So
keep that in mind when we're
keep it in
designing
mind when you're
we'll try to
designing
maximize
it.
the spaces, sure.
Absolutely.
Different schemes may have different numbers of parking spaces, other schemes have as well. We'll try to maximize it when we're laying them out.
But I definitely think we need to look at with the removal of the Buzzell.
Sure.
all right, so we agree, we're gonna do a scheme with removing the Buzzell.
Okay.
And maximize the parking, and try to reduce the impact along School Street of the size of the.
I'm one voice here. I can't see us
No, I understand you're
approving a
saying.
design that hinges on another project passing a town meeting.
Absolutely, I understand that.
Well, the other thing,
140 and 175, that's 315.
Yes. I didn't I wasn't able to get there, you're right. It was, 175
The
was a target.
170 is actually,
It was a target.
is an arbitrary number anyway. I think from a pure zoning standpoint, we could apply to the planning board with 140. Now, we'd get laughed out of town because it's not the use you need for that site. You need that additional space.
And I hear what you're saying, Paul.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
probably-
And don't get me wrong,
Someone
I,
would probably kill me for saying this, but if town hall passes and the senior center doesn't pass, is what you're saying, right?
well,
So,
Yeah,
because one's
yeah.
hinging on the other.
yeah,
So if that's the case, and the town hall passes, well, this building now becomes available for the senior center, right? They're not, the seniors will not be left without a building, because you have a large auditorium and a kitchen, and you have multiple rooms. So even if one passes and not the other, you
Yep.
still have that option.
Okay.
So, not
Right.
that it's ideal, but it's still.
And I would not want to not design the optimal building.
Yeah.
Because of, it's like, well, we didn't do what we preferred because we were anticipating a possibility of it
Yeah.
not.
as long as we have a backup plan for the seniors,
Oh, absolutely.
okay.
It may not work.
And
It
don't
may
get
not
me wrong,
work.
I think that the Bazell is end of life, and I would, like nothing more than to see that
It seems
piece of
like we
land
can't-
used,
It seems like we can.
the right way, so I get that. I just didn't wanna leave the
And that's
seniors.
keeping the building back there. I mean, we haven't even talked about replacing the green, or moving
Yep.
things around, but
Yep.
that was not the preferred location.
So that it steps up. I think that's gonna be important
Yep, no, I think you're right.
from a voting standpoint.
Was there anything else on here, Phil?
I think I have another scheme. Right, so this was, I don't think I ever showed you the upper floor of scheme F. Again, this is very similar to scheme E, it's just compressed. A lot of the things that we talked about that worked in scheme E still work. It's basically the same layout. It just kind of looks like I distorted it a little bit. Other than that, it hasn't really changed. So, scheme G, again, this scheme is a two-story scheme. So, you walk in from the parking lot down below into the lower level. Meeting room suite of spaces is kind of on this side, and toilets there. We've got a vault right here. Your first apartment is right in here, so we could close this down in the evening, and it would isolate the stairs and the elevator and the rest of the departments on this floor. We're trying to take all that storage space and mechanical space and tuck it in around the back, where there are no windows, where the grade is.
Yep.
And then if you take the stairs and the elevator up to the upper floor, you'll see there's a combination of departments up there. There's some town offices up there. There's another door that comes in next to the Bozell out of the parking lot, the way we have this laid out. Stairs and elevator in the center of the plan. There's an exit here that goes out to a set of stairs and then runs down. We may grade this a little bit differently so you can get out on a grade, but basically, these two entrances and exits are stacking up. One of the things that I will point out to you here is that with a two-story scheme, the only stair in the building is the main stair. Exit stairs in a two-story scheme are not required, because all I need is two ways out of each floor. And I can do that up above at the higher elevation, and the scheme wouldn't work down on at the street. You need exit stairs to get on the upper floor. But because it's built into the side of the hill, you can exit out of the building on the upper floor towards the Bozell, and on the lower floor towards the parking lot, and exit stairs are not required. So it saves a little bit of space. This scheme is actually about 42,000 square feet. This is about 1,000 square feet smaller than the other plan. So that's not one of the things that we had talked about specifically when we were talking about two-story schemes, but you will see that in this scheme H. We'll probably end up calling it scheme H. We'll do it. It's next. That will be the same thing. We'll try to improve the efficiency a little bit there. But basically, we try to lay out the offices so that they would, similar in terms of their, layout adjacent to one another, but, you know, we do have this kind of L-shaped plan. We've tucked the school department in and around in the rear portion, and they have views out towards the parking lot at the Bazell and over towards the woods. And then the town offices look out over the parking lot.
Do we lose conference space in total throughout the building, storage space throughout the building?
There is, we may have, this scheme was kind of put together right at the end of the time that we had. And the idea is that some of the conference rooms that we had originally that were kind of tucked in with the offices and so forth, we put some of those out in this space as well. So they were available both during the day for the departments as well as at night. So there's even more meeting room space in that kind of after hours zone. But we may have dropped a couple of them off on the upper floor. Got 1, 2, 3, we may be missing the large one up here. That may have been, yeah, that may have fallen off in this.
Yeah, because one of the things that we were talking about, especially our student support services, is
You have those large meetings, that's that, yeah, that meeting room's
Would
important.
like if they had another couple of one,
Sure.
small one, where parents can.
Well, there's room in the floor plate to support it. We just need to be a little bit more efficient in our planning and make sure that it's not uncommon for things like that to drop off. It's usually something like a janitor's closet. Every now and then it's a department. But we try to get rid of those as much as we can. But, you know, this will probably be the stepping off point for Scheme H. We'll use some of the things that we learned in this one, in Scheme H when we're pushing on that one.
So Phil, I have a question on Scheme G here on the first floor, it would be my understanding then, especially where you have this below grade, that looking towards the left, the hearing room and this community room would have no windows, correct?
We may be able to get some high windows along the side over in here, but the rear portion probably would not have windows. That's right.
Okay, and then going to the right here.
Yeah.
Right about where the accountant is, would the accountants have windows?
Yes,
And
well,
is that a projected staircase that you have?
that's actually outdoors, Diane, and the idea there is that there's a retaining wall that holds back the soil that's piling around that area, and then it would come around. So that when you walk out this door, you'd basically be at the same level as the floor when you're outside, and you'd be able to walk out to the parking lot. So, the floor line here is basically the same as grade, so you can have full height windows along that side, all the way back to this doorway.
And so that would be an exit to the parking lot right there,
That's right, yep.
another exit. But we wouldn't want the people really coming in that way,
No,
really.
no, it's
right?
a,
The public.
no, that's
We
an
want the
that's a
public
fire
coming in
exit,
more
yeah.
Front door, right?
Yes, that's an emergency exit, yep.
Emergency exit, got it. Thank you.
In the other schemes, those doors came directly out of stairways, but we don't need exit stairs in this building again because it's a two-story building.
One of the things I was just wondering about, now I know you've got the recreation department down here on the first floor. You know, they run a lot of programs where they have like upholstery classes and some of these other classes, and right now they hold them in what, you know, it's like the gymnasium of
The auditorium here.
in town hall. So they would probably then go to like one of these, say the community room or something like that.
Yes, I think that's probably true.
Yeah, okay, good.
That may have been why Kevin had suggested in scheme F that they move down to the first floor.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay,
Yeah, I would agree that they belong on the first floor.
And do people agree that the accountant can move up?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, yeah.
The accountant does not need to be tied with the assessor or the
Town clerk.
treasurer collector, yeah.
Well, that, I mean, he does oversee, or they do oversee, Brian oversees those departments, whether it needs to physically be connected, you know, as a practical matter, he can go to those places.
We typically will end up in the town offices with the accountant, either next to treasurer collector or next to the town manager's office. And up upstairs is where the town manager is now.
You don't bother the account.
And usually you're dealing with Brian quite often, so it would make sense he'd be up with you.
I think so.
Okay,
Okay, it makes sense to me, I just wanted to confirm it with you.
yep, absolutely.
And I think that was pretty much it. I think we put a copy of our, of the boards we showed at town meeting, but I
Yep.
saw that they're on tripods outside, so people, I
Yeah.
put them here in case folks hadn't had a chance to see them and weren't interested, but, I think.
We did receive a good response. I mean, people got to see them, so.
I actually talked to probably 2 dozen people.
Holding court out
I was holding court out there.
Yes, you were.
So,
And I have to tell you, it was well received. Both projects were well received. I had one a little grumpy about the town hall and taxes, but I think that probably would have happened if it was anything. That, it was that kind of a grumpy. I don't know if you guys know what I mean.
We do.
Our plan is to move them around to, well, we're gonna leave them here. We have the other ones at the library. We'll swap them out. They'll go to the senior center, just so they can be seen by people coming in.
And obviously, we're gonna, in a month, we're gonna be in a different place. We'll update them.
Yeah. Good.
All right, before I go on to the next steps, I know the chair of the historical commission has been sitting here waiting, and she wants to speak. So, before I go out to public comment to that,
Can I do it now?
please.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bonnie Smith, Chair of the Historical Commission, and I'd just like to read a little statement in behalf of the Historical Commission. I'd like to take this opportunity to make the following statement regarding the future disposition and use of the Bazell School. The Bazell School was constructed in 1935 and dedicated to Dr. Daniel T. Bazell. Dr. Bazell was born in Lee, New Hampshire on April 19, 1857. He attended the University of Vermont, graduating from medical school in 1883. He first practiced medicine in Roxbury, but about a year later moved to Wilmington, and he married Mary Louisa White, a descendant of Lieutenant Benjamin Harnden, and most of you know who the Harndens are, and he was also a Wilmington Minuteman. Mrs. Bazell was an accomplished artist, poet, and writer, and she designed their home on Main Street, which was the former Kavanaugh Funeral Home. It was Dr. Bazell who persuaded a young taxi driver, William Kavanaugh, to become an undertaker, thus establishing that business, and that went on under one name for more than 75 years. The Bazells had one son, Philip, who served as town council for more than a half a century, as well as a town moderator, library trustee, and Boy Scout leader. Dr. Bazell set up a practice in Wilmington in an era when the horse and buggy was much part of the doctor's equipment as a bag of medicines and instruments. And during his 40 years of practice, he never refused a call. He responded to the calls in winter, summer, rich, poor alike. And has been said, and in quotes, his very presence had healing for the sick or sympathy for the troubled or hard beset. The worldwide flu pandemic of 1918 through 1920 did not miss Wilmington. Dr. Bazell was faced with 363 cases of flu and desperately needed help. He set out and hired 2 public health nurses, thereby setting up the first nursing program in Wilmington. For nearly a half a century, Dr. Bazell attended nearly every childbirth in Wilmington and many in Tewksbury. And in the course of his practice, he endeared himself to generations of Wilmington folk. Dr. Bazell died in 1930, and to honor the beloved physician, the next school built in Wilmington in 1935 was named for him and became our first junior high school. The 6-room, single-story school building was a great utility and has continued to serve the town of Wilmington for over 87 years. When the town built the new high school in 1950, the old high school became the junior high. The Bazell School became an elementary school for many years. The classes were 5th and 6th grades, and then in 1955, it became a primary school, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades, and I was one of those students. It has filled other roles through the years. It was a host of Wilmington's first kindergarten class in 1976, the Tiny Tots program, the Soapbox Derby, School Curriculum Center, and in 1981, it was unused as a school. And in 1986, it was converted to the town senior center, where it has been beloved again by many of its former students for the last 36 years. So you see, it's not just an old building. It stands as a tribute to the amazing life of one of Wilmington's most prominent citizens of the early to mid-1900s. Its floor plan and grade level entrance has been open and accessible to the youngest and the oldest residents. The classrooms offer a generous space for offices and meeting rooms, and it should continue to do so. The Wilmington Historical Commission would like to make a recommendation to the town to incorporate this historic building into the design of the new Town Hall School Administration building. Building our future upon solid foundations of the past is one way to continue to honor the man who welcomed 40 years' worth of our citizens into this world, and also thousands of students who expanded their horizons through the Wilmington Public Schools. Respectfully submitted on behalf of the Wilmington Historical Commission, Bonnie Smith, Chair of the Wilmington Historical Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now,
Bonnie, is that EY or IE?
it's B-O-N-N-Y.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Is there anybody else that would like to speak before we move on? Okay. Seeing none. Next steps. Dan, would you like to,
We will probably be doing another newsletter on the Town Hall School Administration between this meeting and the next meeting. I think we have a couple of new schemes we can talk about, and talk about the committee's request for additional schemes also. So we'll put something together in the next week and a half for this committee. And, you know, once we've agreed on a floor area, we'll start the borings.
our next two meetings will be the 18th and the 1st of June. They will be right here in person, barring anything else that happens.
And just to be clear in terms of the new schemes that will be in the works for the next meeting, we're talking about another L-shaped, as was talked about at the prior meeting, that with the one leg running parallel to
School Street.
School Street,
An opposite L.
an opposite L. And then there was another,
The H.
the H scheme.
We also asked, and you guys said it was okay, if we could just encroach a little onto the parking area to see if it would make it fit better. If it, you know, you can always say no after we draw it,
Right.
but, you know, those schemes you're talking about, I think, are going to fit better if we can pull that parking lot a little bit.
And it still seems like scheme F, the one that's up on the screen right now, has some merit. If you'd like us to continue looking at that one, we will. But I wasn't getting anything, I wasn't getting a whole lot of love coming back for the B scheme. Out near the street.
I think the B scheme's going into the,
You said scheme F or B?
This is F, that's up there now.
That's
That's
the
F.
site plan for F, yeah. So I can go back to,
You wanted, what was the question about F?
this
B, I
is,
think was, the B question
he
was.
said there was no love for B.
the B scheme was the one where we had it up near the street here, and we wanted to look at that again. We ended up with 190-something spaces versus what we have here. We might be able to, if we change that around a little bit more and went back to something that's closer to the B1 scheme, we could probably get more like 250 spaces. You might be able to add a little bit more if you did some more parking over in here. This, but again, putting a building down on the street has some urban planning benefits, and if anybody likes the idea of having the building on the common, we could continue to look at a scheme like this if you're interested.
Would that require a retaining wall?
That
Parking would.
Yes, the
Parking would?
parking would, yeah.
So is the concern with this particular option that it may curtail some of the, like the July 4th activities and other
Well,
activities?
that big yellow spot there, is, we get somewhere between 0.8 and 0.9 acres of open space in all of these schemes for those type of events.
The larger rides.
And then you could certainly, you could certainly do some things directly in front of the Fourth of July building between these two, sets of trees, for example. That's over 60 feet across right there. It's probably more like 70 or 80. And that's probably, 100. So you could certainly do something sizable there between those trees as well. And you could certainly set things up, I don't know, like a midway, things like that are smaller could certainly fit anywhere in the parking lot, but we just try to identify some large open spaces for things like a merry-go-round or a tilt-a-whirl or whatever they're gonna,
Zipper.
whatever they typically bring in.
The zipper.
The zipper.
I wanna see George go on the zipper.
So that's, I think all these schemes, we try to identify a spot like that where it could fit. But I didn't know if there was any interest in looking at a street building. One of the things that the building on the street does is it stays away from the hill and the wetland completely.
Saves a gazelle.
Right, and it also,
Yeah.
I don't know, it would seem like the fact that
Green is kind of like.
spatially further away from School Street, it may be less of a concern for the neighbors over in that neck of the woods.
From School Street, right, one of the benefits is that you're looking across the whole green before you get to that building.
Right.
So the perspective of the building obviously takes up less of your overall view.
Diane, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I've always thought that quite frankly, the town hall should be closer to the street. Being the most important building in town, I think a lot of people, when they first come to our town, they really think the library is the town hall, with the columns, and it's a beautiful looking building, our library, with the columns and everything, and I always envisioned our town hall the same. My only concern with the building here in the front is the side entrance. I always feel that I don't know how the building would be designed. I mean, we'd probably have windows and everything, but as far as signage or a small overhead coming into the building, the main entrance would be from the front, so that, again, like the library, if you look at our library across the street, it has that statement to it that it is a public building and more of a New England style public building.
But the
But
library,
I have and I think the town manager has raised a very good point about not only the people on School Street may like it, but it won't block their view as much, because most of the homes would have still, with all that parking in the back, have quite a view of open space that they're looking at. And my last question is the Swain Green, is that a historical site that can't be touched, or we call it the Swain Green, and
Because of the Swain School used to be
is there nothing that could we put like benches or park benches there, or something there with trees or whatever on the Swain Green, or can that not be touched at all?
There's no reason why it can't be touched, or
Right.
that the building can't go on it. It was just a request of the committee early on that we try to keep the green and try to keep as much space for the annual events as possible. And I think that was why we went in that direction on leaving it alone. I was wondering if maybe this would be a good time for us to get, that front building B or B1, B2, or some combination of B, developed a little more, and come up with the solution for the building in the rear and develop that a little more, have the two solutions in it, and maybe that's the time to have a public forum and get input from the public to see if they want the building closer to the green or do they want the building closer to the rear. You know, what do you think of that idea?
No, it's a good idea.
I think that's a great idea.
I do
I
too.
think that's a great suggestion.
it's a good idea?
And I don't always agree with you.
Yep.
Yeah, this is gonna be a first, Diane.
All right, I think, yeah, to that point, I think it's a good idea. Because we can have to go back and forth on all this.
Yeah, so if we can get some of these to fit in the back at the next meeting, the following meeting, we can have the facades developed. We can then do a public forum in mid-June, and get input before everyone runs away for summer vacation. And if they like one way more than the other, then I think it might be time for us to abandon one and
Move in that direction.
move in that direction so that we're ready for town meeting in the fall.
Would you also suggest that we take a piece of the swing green away and make the building a little bit longer and shorter? And develop the green area in the
And more
back of the
parking
building?
spaces on the other side. and-
Develop the green area in the back of a elongated building?
I'll leave the design to the designer, you know, I mean, if you guys are gonna let us play with swaying green, we'll play with it. It seemed to have been sacred, and we've kinda stayed away from it, I mean, from day one, I mean, if it's not sacred, it's not sacred. But as we come closer with pavement, we are gonna get the residents on School Street that have now become accustomed to the swaying green, getting a little more agitated,
Plus the trees would cover the building on the side.
so.
And I think that retaining the swaying green retains a very popular and successful farmer's market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That keeps people from, we could move the farmer's market to the common, but now you have people crossing the street.
Two very busy streets.
Yeah, so I think that maintaining the green, from my point of view, has always been paramount, because that it works, it's successful, and people can park there and just walk over to it without having to deal with crossing the street, so.
And nothing says the farmer's market has to be on grass either. It could always be in that parking area.
The farmer's market can be a Gentile.
Right.
Recreation facility.
Right, we have a great grass area for that one too.
True.
Yeah.
But maybe
And a lot,
the
a
swing
lot of parking.
green gets a little smaller, just utilize some
Well,
of
that's
it.
what I'm saying, Diane.
So
You reduce the swing green a little bit, but not in its entirety.
I'll agree with
And then
that.
you're maintaining the Bazell.
Finding out is you have a little-
Keep that.
Right, exactly.
So what I'm reading, and I wanna make sure I get this right and don't get in trouble at the next meeting, is that you're giving us a little elbow room on the parking, and you're giving us a little elbow room on the green. We're not wiping out the green, we're not wiping out the parking, but you're giving us a little elbow room. And we'll come back with scheme B .3.
Then we can go out.
And then we'll have something developed for the back, and if you like the plan in the back, you know, whether it's scheme H or I or J, once we have the two plans, we'll develop the facades, and then we'll do a quick road show.
Is this something, Phil, you think you can start having ready for our next meeting?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
we'll have a scheme
Could
on the
we have
street,
an
and we'll have
elevation of those buildings?
You want some borings too?
Generate an elevation?
I was thinking,
No.
Diane, that we
Can't do
try and get the plans done for the next meeting, and then do nothing but the elevations on the following meeting. So focus on agreeing the plans, and then go to the elevations the following meeting. So that way we're done with it on June first, and we
Yeah,
can go on the road
absolutely.
in the middle of the June.
But you should be confident that whatever plan we show you, they're all gonna be beautiful.
I just want to ask the
That's what you're
chair,
doing.
Bonnie, before we
I don't know that
go,
I'm doing
there's nothing, no concern that the historical commission has about the swaying green, correct, the grass? All right.
We have requested, I think in the past, that to get some kind of a, like Diane mentioned, a plaque or a bench or something depicting that
Former
the
swing
that the
school.
swing school was there. We were going to use that big concrete, it said Wilmington High School.
Yeah,
We have that
I know you do.
in our carriage house.
I moved it there.
We don't know what we're gonna do. We have the
And it was heavy.
We have the Whitfields in there as well.
Yeah, yep.
But we did request to maybe something to depict that that was the Swain School site. But as far as encroaching on the green,
Okay,
you know,
right.
As we get to the interior of the building,
Move
I mean, it is not uncommon when we do these buildings,
the
town
Roman
halls,
house sign in
to
there.
have, historical themes,
Roman house
and, you know, pictures and plaques and things of that nature
Sure.
of the past.
Yeah.
Integrating the past into that building. This will be the town's third town hall.
Oh,
So, you know, you wanna have a little of the history of the
yeah,
town.
we're just, I think, concerned that we're gonna lose sight of the fact that that school was named after an extremely prominent person in this town, and we don't want him to be forgotten.
And name the senior center, the Bazell Senior Center.
With the new one.
Yeah.
Alright.
We
Why
did the
not?
same thing in the high school. We put all the plaques from all the old
All
high
the old
school.
buildings.
All the old plaques are in there, and it's nice.
It's just nice.
Yeah, you saw
It teaches the youth to respect the past. So.
Alright, so we reviewed the next steps, we
Yep.
did the public comment, any other discussion? If not,
Who's making the motion?
motion to adjourn, made by John Doherty,
John Doherty?
second.
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Get out of here, George.
I know.
And Phil.
Question for you.